Welcome back to the show, everybody. We got a good one for you today. So we know the banks keep printing money. You know, I believe we have a potential setup for a global reset incoming. We're going to hear a narrative from the IMF that really is starting to line up with Ripple and XRP. Let's just roll that beautiful intro.
This is Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Subscribe for new content notifications. Now, here's Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show. You can follow me on Twitter at BackupBradleyAbove at the top of the screen and everything that we're talking about here today. Let's go ahead and get started. So the crypto market space as a whole has dipped below $1 trillion. I don't like seeing it, no more than you do. Bitcoin down to $34,861 right now. Ethereum sitting at $1,200 and skipping all the way down to the 5 spot now. We see XRP is at 27 cents, 0.2743. We are off 15.5% on the 7 day. So just don't like it, right? None of us do. But this is where we are for right now. We know the things that are happening that are causing this. And that, at least, is something we can point to. 10.06% off on Bitcoin right now. And we know we have the Tether Bitfinex lawsuit. And we also know that we have the SEC market regulator suing Ripple and XRP for being an unregistered security. So, moving on. Regardless of all of that news, Michael Val 5link shares with us, however, January 16 saw this value almost double as Grayscale BTC added 5,113 or 130 Bitcoin to its bags. This shot its total assets under management to $22.9 billion. Damn. Yeah, that's a lot. Now, listen, I keep showing you this when these things pop up. But I tell you, you cannot overstate what we're looking at here. China is accelerating its pace of development of its CBDC. They see this as a critical competitive advantage in the digital economy, and they're right to do so. Given the nature of China's markets and governance, it is determined to gain first mover advantage in the central bank digital currency race. This, I'm telling you, is the pressure we all need to see. Because whether you come from the camp that the U.S. is behind or whether you come from the camp that the U.S. is intentionally going to be the last out of the gate because it already has the first mover advantage, that it is, in fact, the U.S. dollar, that is the global reserve currency status. It doesn't matter which camp you come from. Seeing this information continually put out that China is racing forward is evidence enough to know that this is real pressure on the rest of the world to not sit back, whether it's the United States or whether it's some other country that hasn't really gotten with the program to this point. So this to me is extremely exciting to see that they are continuing to push forward, and everyone knows. Everyone clearly understands and knows you do not want China running the world and being the leader in the fourth industrial revolution. That is not even something we have to take apart. Now, in other news, Flare Networks is opening doors, giving smart contract functionality both to XRP and Litecoin in recent news, which we covered here, which is very exciting. But I want you to look at this diagram that was shared by Mr. C, Baba Cooks. Shout out to you, my friend. Eyes open. Take a look at this illustration. I am such a visual learner. I just love this. This, to me, is just a great way to see what's going on here. And what I see is the, inner workings of a financial system and the protocols to facilitate it. We have the W3C, which was gifted to the Interledger, the ILP, Interledger Protocol, which was gifted to the W3C standards body that oversees the internet with an international community. RippleNet, right, which is the project that they built that has the governance and compliance built into the enterprise network for banks and companies to use. Here we see the central banks developing CBDCs that can be used wholesale back end through the ledger back end settlement here, right? And then we see the Flare, FXRP, XETH, XBTC, XLTC, XUSD, trustless asset swaps. And then we see Flare networks, right? And FBTC, FUSD, Ethereum, and Litecoin. I just love the way this is laid out here, showing securities and commodities that can also be put on the ledgers here. And this, to me, just looks exactly like you would want to see it. I mean, this is a great way to understand how you can bring that utility to XRP and not only the Flare networks. But I mean, this is just remarkable to me. I love this diagram. I just think it's wonderful. So shout out to Mr. C for sharing that with everybody here. One thing we do know is that whether it's the Fed or the European Union or the European Central Bank or anyone else printing money, one day it will stop. Well, I do believe that, at some point, as much as we have seen in history, the central banks that are able to print their own money, they have constantly kicked the can down the road. I just believe that at some point we have to see a complete transition to a digital ledger system. Look, there's already digital money, right, out here. There's an adjustment made on the books. When you go deposit your check into an account in your bank, it's not held in a shoebox somewhere that's got your name on it and however much money's in the shoebox. It's a digital representation of what you hold. The difference to moving to a new financial system is having all of that done on something like what we just looked at here, which is a ledger, a protocol, a distributed ledger technology, right? So that's the difference, is moving that record keeping to that. And then obviously because of that, you get the benefits of the token and the settlement time and the rest of it. So obviously there is a narrative that everyone is printing money, and the encouragement here is funny because listen to this. MetLife finally says, you know what? This central bank digital currency thing's not a fad. Well, there's going to be more of these epiphanies in the conventional markets, right? That's what you're seeing here. I would just like to welcome MetLife to the game, and I would like to tell them it's the fourth quarter. We're down 2 touchdowns, and the ball's going this way. Get your helmet on. Let's get going. So the IMF says, you know what? We don't need to be reminded that CBDCs are coming. We've got several narratives that we are shoving up the flagpole, and this is one of them. The IMF chief urges green and digital investment for post-pandemic recovery. And that's not all. A synchronized approach internationally was best for growth. XRP Photographer asked a great question. Debt reset incoming? One would have to ask, because what we're talking about here is we're talking about the idea of the IMF telling all the governments around the world to spend as much as you can. It's a real thing. Listen to this. It's very short. In terms of policies for right now, very unusual for the IMF starting in March, I would go out and I would say, please spend. Spend as much as you can, then spend a little more. I continue to advocate for monetary policy accommodation, they're calling it, and fiscal policies that protect the economy from collapse at a time when we are on purpose restricting both production and consumption. I do like the acknowledgement in there that they deliberately shut down the economy across the world. I do love that part, at least, right? Georgieva praises Russia's synchronized response to the economic challenges created by the pandemic, mentioning both the central bank's monetary easing and fiscal stimulus from the finance ministry. She also called for more international cooperation, as has been seen in the race for a solution to the pandemic. I can't say certain words, guys, because, the platform I use will block me if I do. So on the push for digital and green growth, it says here the IMF calculated that a coordinated G20 fiscal stimulus and green infrastructure, if it is done in a coordinated manner, notice that narrative, a coordinated manner, would deliver 2/3 more in growth than if each country acts on its own. So listen to that, coordinated manner. If they act in a coordinated manner, like a synchronized event of everybody. How does a bank and central banks go green? They go digital. But I just explained to you that they already have digital money. Well, not digital in the sense that they're on their own individual networks that don't talk to one another, because that's what we currently have. Digital in the sense that we all end up on a private network that's built on something like, I don't know, let's say the XRP Ledger open source technology. Yeah, I think that's about as good of a guess as any. And then here we see that the IMF, as I said, has many narratives and things going on at once here. And I believe there's a reason for it. And it's starting to line up a lot with what Ripple and XRP are doing. Researchers at the IMF have examined central bank laws of 174 IMF members to answer the question of whether a digital currency can be used and legally. Now, let's take a look at this, because it's really what you need to see here is the IMF says only 23% of central banks can legally issue digital currencies under the current rules, laws, and regulations that they have at this time. That puts us at about 40 central banks. That's an interesting number. Remember that one. Now, I want to come down here because it does the breakdown. We don't really need to get into that. What we do need to understand is why can they not do that right now, right? It says, technically speaking, they can't call digital currencies money based on the legal framework that most of these IMF countries have right now. But it does say, after breaking down all of that, it says, in conclusion, while noting that without the legal tender designation, achieving full currency status could be equally challenging. The researchers emphasize, listen to this, many means of payments widely used in advanced economies are neither legal tender nor currency. You know what that means? Even after we showed you all the graphs and the surveys and this, that, and the other, we're doing it anyway. That's what that means. That's what that means. Now, this is a clip from a while back from Monica Long and Michelle Bond, who's recently exited and gone on to a new chapter in her career. Shout out to her and Monica Long, who's also now the general manager of Ripple Spring. So congratulations to her as well. Let's start here at 127 and just listen to what Michelle Bond says at the time when they were, how many governments are Ripple really working with?
And Ripple works in the existing regulated framework, which is
interesting because they're being sued,
which is very exciting. Ripple is, in addition, a regulated company in and of itself.
And that's interesting because they're being sued.
We are FinCEN regulated, and we also have a Department of Financial Services BIT license.
And they're still being sued.
I oversee the global government relations team, and we are engaging with 50 different governments worldwide. And
well, I'm sorry, what? 50 different governments worldwide. Wow, that's almost like the 40 banks that really could change and actually use digital currencies without any interruption to their current framework. Pretty darn interesting little statistic there, isn't it? And it's pretty interesting, too, that she notes just how compliant they've been and how open they've been about working within the framework that already exists in the financial banking world. This is why I remind you, I believe the SEC lawsuit is imperative that it actually take place, because Ripple is the first company behind a digital asset. There's no one to call when Bitcoin fails. There's no one to call when Ethereum fails. The foundation behind that is really for developers who are looking to build on the network. It's not someone to call like customer service. This is the first representation of what would be like a Chevron and oil. You have Ripple and XRP, the digital asset, right? And obviously, I believe they need legal precedent on this case so that they can move forward clearly without ever being challenged again. I also believe there's a good chance that this case escalates itself to Supreme Court status, just like the Howey case that ended up birthing the Howey test for the SEC. After this is over, if we got it called right, it looks like we should get something, whether they settle legally before going through the distance or whether they actually go the distance, whatever it is, as long as we come out with something they cannot challenge anymore and precedent on what we are, and it doesn't hurt the full-scale intended use of XRP, I don't care what they call it. That's where we're at on this day. And we have one more spot that I really wanted to play here that's really, really important. Let me get to this. It is at 10:15, and you are going to want to hear this because this is about as real as it gets right here, and this is coming directly from Ripple. Listen to what they say very carefully.
Project in the context of RippleNet.
So I think Facebook Libra has a fundamentally different strategic vision than Ripple. One of the things that we do is we really are partnering with financial institutions, and we're operating within the existing regulatory framework.
So understand right there, financial institutions within the regulatory framework. She did not say you and I. Keep listening.
That's actually always been the bedrock of Ripple's strategy. That's something very important to us. The other thing that I think sets us apart is that we're really changing the infrastructure for cross-border payments, and we're not consumer-facing in any way. So I think.
I'm sorry, did you hear what she just said? We are not consumer-facing in any way. I'm going to ask you, did you hear what she just said? We are not consumer-facing in any way. Listen.
That I think sets us apart is that we're really changing the infrastructure for cross-border payments, and we're not consumer-facing in any way. So
And there you have it. And it's not consumer-facing in any way. Because, look, I think we have this the way we've talked about it many times on this channel. I think we understand it. She's talking about Ripple. She's broadly talking about the products at Ripple. She's talking about cross-border transactions. And to me, she's talking about the idea, notion that they're able to settle wholesale back end, whatever it is, FX market, derivatives market, remittance market, you name it, there it is. That is going to do it for me. You know, global reset incoming? I don't know, but it certainly feels like we got something. If it's not that, we got something that looks an awful lot like it coming. That's going to do it for me. Hit the like and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Make sure you share with somebody you know and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And check out all the links in the description box and the comment section. By the way, PureVPN help hide your anonymity online. It's one of the many layers of protection I use, and PureVPN is definitely one of them. And they're running at 89% special right now. I'll catch you on the next one.